And I'm going to start this morning with the Irish Independent, and a lot of the newspapers leading this morning. The main rugby story really is the terrible news that Dan Leavy is going to miss the World Cup. Leavy devastated by World Cup KO. Luckless flanker reveals injury despair as Carberry hamstring fears deepen. Solskjaer insists Pogba is staying put despite Real interest is the other story here. I presume it's one of the stories across all the back pages this morning. Solskjaer in front of a microphone really for the first time since Pogba was asked about Real Madrid and saying that he'd love to join Real Madrid when they were kind of voiced his admiration for the club, and Zidane has come out and said he'd love to have Paul Pogba there one day as well. So a bit of kind of an open flirtation between the two Frenchmen, but Solskjaer saying that Pogba's going nowhere.
Yeah, he kind of can't say anything else, can he? You know, I mean, Solskjaer needs to kind of nip this in the bud as quickly as he can. He said that on a trip away with France, but the Times, which I admire, I think the Times is doing a lot of good stuff in terms of its Irish content, and Gary Doyle has been quite strong on trying to figure out what the FAI board is thinking with regards to John Delaney, and he never really names anyone in his stories, but he's obviously working with sources there, and Delaney still has the backing of FAI board. In essence, what Gary Doyle is saying here, that for John Delaney to go from the FAI, it's likely to have to happen from within, and that isn't going to happen here because according to Gary, in terms of the board, he just needs 6 out of the 10 to be in favour of him, and he has at least that according to a source. So obviously tomorrow there's the meeting with the Sports Council, and then the Oireachtas Committee is next week. But Pickford will face inquiry into bar brawl as well. This is one of the things that just makes me disgusted about the culture of football fans to an extent in England, where Jordan Pickford goes for a drink in his native Sunderland and he's just basically abused by people up there, himself and his wife or girlfriend, I can't exactly remember, but it seems to have got slightly out of hand. But I don't know, I'd have lost sympathy for Jordan Pickford. He's trying to have a day out off the pitch, and he's just getting abused by people. Yeah, it's open season on a lot of those players. The Irish Times leads with crushing blow for Leavy as World Cup dream is dashed. Jerry Thornley's column then talks about the quarter-finals and how they never failed to deliver the goods. There's Johan Van Gran did a press conference yesterday, and the headline here is that he's got no regrets about starting Joey Carberry in the game against Edinburgh. He says it's too early to say how long the out-half will be sidelined with the injury though, and Tyner lines out for Lansdowne, says Johnny Waterson. He looks set to line now for them this week in the AIL. He's welcomed back to the club on social media yesterday following time out after an ankle injury. So that's an interesting storyline to follow up on this weekend. Yeah, and the Daily Mail goes with Pickford as well. Leavy agony, obviously, Japan KO. For interesting as well that there's a piece on Shane O'Donnell's return to Clare, which Clare have kind of been slightly under the radar in terms of their neighbours Limerick completely dominating the discourse. And it's funny with the hurling now, because you think Galway, everyone knows, a lot of people are saying to me, no, Galway can't win the All-Ireland and all this, and Limerick, there's so much kind of talk that Limerick are basically, they've so much depth in the squad, they look impervious on Sunday, and that it's a straightforward case. But Munster doesn't work like that at all. Munster is far too competitive, and Limerick just need to kind of keep their feet in the ground. Yeah, and the folly of the structure of the calendar is that basically it's a new season in a month's time. Now granted, I'm sure Intercounty setup's managed to keep things ticking along nicely while teams are playing for their clubs and all that. Yeah. But I'd kind of share your view. I wouldn't be too concerned for Galway just yet. Back page of the Irish Daily Star, meanwhile, is Pog won't fly. Madrid move not on cards, says Solskjaer. Sadio saying all or nothing. Mane saying Liverpool will need to win all 6 remaining games to win the Premier League title. You've got that Jordan Pickford story there as well. He's in hot water. And Brown backlash is ludicrous. John Kennedy has labelled attacks on Scott Brown as ludicrous. The Celtic number 2 last night insisted the club are privileged to have such a class act for a skipper. And then you've also got the Arsenal players celebrating their 2-0 win against Newcastle last night, bringing them up to 3rd place in the Premier League. Yeah, the race from post. Henderson backs Boover in Aintree hurdle battle with Mullins big guns. So Boover there, who was a costly faller for a lot of punters at Cheltenham, he's going to take on the Willie Mullins battalion at Aintree in the Aintree hurdle. It's going to be a cracking race. And on the back, race for a title, 11 to 8 to be decided on the final day. So that's something that people who might like a flutter will think of. So that'll go all the way to the last days, 11 to 8, and it looks very possible that it will, because Manchester City do have a harder run in. They've to play Spurs and Man United, but you know there's a lot of talk in the papers about Liverpool having to win all their games. I think Sadio Mane said that they most certainly probably will have to win all their games.
Back page of the Mirror goes with a different angle. It's an interesting story here. Darren Lewis has an exclusive with Yaya Toure, and he says football is failing black players. The game only reacts when something happens, just like it did with Raheem Sterling, he says. Solskjaer is sure Pogba stays, he says. And Ramsey, they're going to miss you when you're gone. They certainly will. Scoring last night for Arsenal in their win against Newcastle.
Yeah, the club conundrum. Club Cork to vote on historic championship restructuring. This gets front page billing in the Examiner, which is an excellent supplement today. And this is a really fascinating discussion in terms of where the club game is going versus the inter-county game. You can switch it on and off. The mindset and approach behind Liverpool. And John Fogarty says Cork must be commended for asking the question the GAA dare not ask. And Tony O'Donoghue then has a lovely tribute to Pat McAuliffe. I spent time with Pat on the Dundalk's away Odyssey in 2016, and I hadn't met him before. God, a fella you'd warm to straight away. Just loved the crack. Great chats about music, sports. You'd warm to him immediately, and you kind of felt like you knew him all your life. And heart attack in his sleep, I think, at the age of 61. Very, very, very sad.
An absolute genius when it comes to everything Cork.
Yeah, and like a real iconic Cork accent and a kind of iconic voice as well. You knew it was Pat McAuliffe when he spoke, and obviously with tributes to people, people who pass away, you rarely hear bad things about them, but just going through it yesterday and talking to people, he really did make a warm impression on people. And he had to evolve as a journalist as well, because Tony says in his piece that he advised him to kind of become indispensable to RT in terms of being a Cork correspondent. And there was a lovely story as well online yesterday about how he was at a game, I think it was some Gaelic football game maybe in Munster, and he was given like kind of like first half sort of every few minutes he'd give an update or whatever, but then it turned out that he had to give full commentary in the second half of the game. So he went into the crowd and plucked a mate he knew to do co-commentary, and he just made the most. But he was that type of fella. He kind of the mischievous kind of wink in his eye, I remember as well, and it's very, very sad. He's a great loss to Irish journalism. Yeah, for sure. We'll move on to the Herald this morning. They lead with the Sadio Mane story as well. We need 6 of the best. He says Liverpool can win the title, but it won't be easy. Dan Leavy saying I'm haunted after a horror injury. Solskjaer saying that Pogba is very happy at United, and Andy Moran is saying that the Dubs are still ahead. We'll come back to Mayo in just a moment. Yeah, pretty good headline to be fair. With the Sun, say Solskjaer, my Pog won't go walkies. So Solskjaer has promised that Pogba has promised that he's not part of a dirty tricks campaign. And Leavy and Andy Moran obviously dominating. Ram Raid Gunners grabbed third, and unbelievable for Andy Moran, in fairness, after what he said was the first time he's actually genuinely considered it. 36 this year. What a man. This Gaelic football is 100% no country for old men, but he's defying that, and no better man to make that pivotal pass for the goal on Sunday as well, because he's an unbelievable eye for a pass. Back page of The Guardian is no issue. Paul is happy here. Solskjaer is still planning to build his United team around Pogba, and Arsenal's capital gain. Ramsey and Lacazette enhance Champions League qualification hopes as Emery's men leapfrog Spurs into third place. And then finally, from the physical copies of the papers, we have the Telegraph here. Goes with a women in sports story. These girls are transforming school sport so it is uplifting and fun for all, but most of Britain faces an obesity and activity crisis. The Telegraph Women's Sport launches Girls Inspired. It's a campaign to close the gender sports gap in schools and keep girls active. We can also bring you the back page of AS this morning, or the front page of it I should say even. Hazard y Pogba, primeros objetivos. Do you have any good French or any good Spanish? I think it's pretty self-explanatory with the Real Madrid crest there, what exactly this is suggesting, that Real Madrid have got their eyes set on these two boys, Eden Hazard and Paul Pogba, and what a bit of summer business that would be if they managed to lure those two to the Bernabeu. We can also bring you the Irish news this morning, the Cara O'Kane story that there'll only be 2 Ulster games live this summer on RTE TV. And depending on your point of view there. So just 3 Ulster Senior Football Championship ties. Yeah, RTE likely to screen 2 games at Sky Sports to show 1. And it's going to be the same situation as last year really, where the hurling just kind of takes over, and ultimately you've only got a certain amount of hours in the game, you really can't blame broadcasters for picking the hurling, because I guess really if you were to show one or the other, if they were clashing during the course of the National League, you're probably going to pick
football in some occasions, because it probably means a little bit more to the counties, whereas with the fact that there's an actual league in both provinces come the summertime, I think it's just a no-brainer to actually pick the hurling. So I think that's probably part of the reason why football is going to get left behind as well this summer. We do want to stick with the GAA though, because we want to get into a couple of the stories, and inside the back page of the Irish Independent this morning, Donncha Boyle has the headline, 175 games for one national title, Moore now wants more of it. So the veteran forward is re-energised by the summer, first summer by Mayo League success. There he is celebrating in Croke Park on Sunday. You've been a teammate of Andy Moore?
Yeah, under 14 Roscommon and District League.
Right.
It was one of the saddest kind of periods of my youth, because I thought I did really well when I was. The first year I played for the under 14s, I thought I did very well, and I was underage the following year. And I was thinking, well, this is great, because you're going to be, it's the second year you're playing, you're going to be better again. But I struggled more the second year, and I wasn't really holding my place. It was kind of on and off, and it was only like a few representative games. But Andy Moore arrived that year. He's a year younger than me, I think. If not, he's slightly younger than me anyway. But funny, when he was playing, you know, what I would call football, but when he was playing soccer at that time, he had a kind of a class and technical ability that was very unusual for that level, I thought. Like, when I was underage, there wasn't that much in terms of technical ability. It was a lot of kick and rush. You could see from a lot of players that they were basically Gaelic footballers playing soccer. But Andy Moore wasn't like that. He really did have a quality about him. And a few years later, I played for Shivan Rovers against him in the Roscommon League Senior, and I just remember marvelling at his ability to pass the ball. He was like a quarterback, basically. And I was thinking at that time, this lad could definitely, at the very least, play League of Ireland. Because I knew Andy Moore and through playing soccer with him when I was younger, when he started playing for Mayo, I still thought of him as the Andy Moore I remembered from playing soccer with. And he was a brilliant soccer player. I really think he could have done really well in the game. But you can see the quality in both codes, in that he must be one of the best passers of the ball in Gaelic football, and his intelligence and his movement. But when, you know, that pass at the end, it was ultimately quite simple to set up the goal, but it was still Andy Moore and being able to pick out a pass that maybe others would have missed. And I thought it was a lovely story. 175 games. He makes a lovely point about his daughter, that he'd hoped that they'd have celebrated him winning like Sam Maguire, and the daughter would have been in the cup, but she's a bit too old for that now. You know, but the two kids he has, I think his two kids were both there on Sunday, and we've spoken about this off air. You know, people reacting to Mayo maybe going a little bit over the top. We're dead long enough. Who cares? Go up there.
They haven't gone over the top.
Yeah, they haven't gone over the top.
That's just not true.
They're not like saying, I think you said there were still 12-1 to win the Ireland, even double figures. I spoke to a couple of Mayo fans afterwards. They just enjoyed winning the game.
Yeah.
Winning a final at Croke Park. They know there's a long road ahead. There wasn't an awful lot in the game on Sunday. You know, Kerry could still have. I thought Mayo's game management wasn't great at the end as well. But these are things you want an element of shadow boxing in a league final, where Kerry can say, well, what went wrong here? Because you don't really want. None of these teams really want to win by 10 points on Sunday. You want to have something to work on. But Mayo just enjoyed being up there. The different, like the Mayo crowd compared to the Kerry crowd, it must have been nearly 10-1, I'd say, in terms of Mayo fans. Kerry people generally don't really travel, and
they've been travelling better this year than they have in previous years, without question. 10-1 I think is a bit dramatic. Maybe
a bit dramatic, but certainly a lot more. I mean, there was no comparison when Kerry got a point compared to Mayo in terms of the noise. But Mayo fans they must be the most fanatical in the country, really. Kerry wouldn't be. In fairness, Kerry are quite used to success down the years. They don't travel as much, or certainly didn't. But Mayo just enjoyed this, and it was put in, you know, Donncha Boyle's piece, 175 games just to win a league title. And fair play to them, they have a chance. They really have a chance. Connacht doesn't have an awful lot of depth to it. Mayo will fancy their chance of beating Galway this year into the Super 8s if that's the case. Dublin looks slightly vulnerable. The Championship, I know you're talking about the hurling. Hurling is still where it's at, but the Championship in football this year there's going to be an awful lot more sort of appetite and expectation for it, because there do look to be at least 4 legitimate contenders, I think, for the All-Ireland this year.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. Let's hear what Andy Moore was saying after the game. Here he is talking to Oisin Langan about how much Sunday meant to him.
If I'm being honest, if you ask me, the 8 AM this morning, what I'd be saying, it's a National League game, it's final, we'd love to win it. But you hear the music afterwards, you see the goal going in, and until you experience that, I don't really think you can imagine how important it is. And if I didn't experience it, I'd have never known it. But I'm very happy now that I've experienced it and seen it. And listen, we need to build now for the summer and try to go for the big one.
He's bang on there. Like, even from a supporter's standpoint, I think most people would say the same thing. That the morning of, it's like, it's just league final. Not going to get too happy if your team wins. Not going to get too happy if they lose. And then the game happens and you get into it. And then the second half is like haywire. It's like proper championship. And it's like you're then devastated. Say, for example, if your team loses, which might have happened to a couple of us on Sunday, you do kind of come away saying, Jesus,
a couple of us?
I'm absolutely gutted with that. So I like you kind of touched on that point there. Anybody who's saying or kind of sneering at Mayo and their fans for celebrating on Sunday can go get a life, basically, because they're absolutely entitled to that and they absolutely should be doing that. Let's not forget how well Dublin celebrated, or how jubilant they were on the pitch when they won their first National League title, or one of the early ones back at the start of the Jim Gavin run. Like, it was a big deal to them then. It became less of a big deal because they were so ridiculously successful in the middle of the summer and they got used to it. You get conditioned to success. Kerry celebrated it hugely in 2017. Limerick were pretty happy when they won on Sunday as well, let's not forget.
Limerick were pretty happy, and you know, it's a bit of a poison chalice for Limerick winning the league championship after win the championship, because it puts them further up on a pedestal where everyone wants to knock them down now. But I mean, the league has become really competitive, and it's obviously the point is made that league football this year, with Dublin losing 3 of their games, you've basically teams that are capable of beating each other every other day of the week, and you know. The championship obviously is quite anachronistic, and it's quite anomalous at this stage in terms of how the provinces are kind of a little bit outdated and all that. Like, Mayo winning the Connacht title this year, to me, wouldn't mean that much to them at all, really, apart from it giving them straight into Super 8s. Galway winning another Connacht title, it's fine, but winning the league actually in Croke Park for Mayo would have meant a lot more really than winning a Connacht title by itself. A Connacht title is fine, but we've been there, done that. We haven't won in Croke Park, and the Mayo fans, you could just see how much it meant to them. It was a borderline championship atmosphere at times on Sunday. There was a very good crowd, I thought, for what it was, and who really cares? I remember as a kid following Galway hurlers at Croke Park, and those memories of going home in the car and long journeys home in misery are really etched in your mind, and Mayo have had an awful lot of them, and it's nice to be able to go home and maybe pop in for a pint somewhere on the way home and say we won today.
Yeah, definitely.
You know? And they won't. In terms of the championship, like, James Horan is a very realistic manager, and he does have them believing again, but they've nothing to get ahead of themselves about, really, because they know that there isn't a huge deal of expectation still about Mayo. You talk about Tyrone, and like, Mayo were Mayo 2-1, 9-4 on Sunday.
They were 3-1 at one point earlier on last week.
I find that astonishing.
Yeah. Like, but we did make that point on the show last week that that was a no-brainer, really.
Yeah, and Mayo will just hope that maybe dampened expectation continues into the championship, because Mayo haven't gone away, you know, but putting it that way, they didn't have a great championship last year, but a lot of things went against them. O'Connor's sending off in Castlebar against Galway was one of the pivotal moments of Mayo's championship, because I think Mayo would have won that game, being honest, with 15 men. And then the whole season went on a completely different route that they, for once, weren't able to hurdle. But they haven't gone away.
Let's talk Paul Pogba for a moment. There's been weird sort of criticism of Paul Pogba. There's been... I guess he is the only person here that you could potentially criticise in this situation about speaking about his potential ties to Real Madrid during the international break. Solskjaer was in front of the media yesterday speaking about it. He says that Paul is a very nice and polite man, and that's why he got caught talking about this. He answered a general question about Zidane, who's an icon in France and a fantastic manager. He used to be a fantastic player, and he's just politely answered that question. But Paul is happy here. He's going to be a big part here. I've said before, you like to build your team around him, and that hasn't changed at all. That's all true. What do you think, though, from a Paul Pogba perspective? Are we placing too much credence in these quotes? The idea that behind the scenes he's working on something here to force the move away?
I don't think you can, you know, I'm trying to look for the quotes again now. I don't think you can put too much credence into them, because they are of the flirtatious nature, and whether, you know, you can clearly take you know, quotes completely into a context, remove A, remove C, and B in the middle doesn't represent what he said at all. But Pogba doesn't need to answer like that. He can basically pour cold water on it, and it's a story, but it's not much of a story. And you know, I don't have a lot of faith in Pogba as a character. I thought he was a disgrace for Jose Mourinho. Whatever about Mourinho or what his relationship with Mourinho was, he was playing for Manchester United. He was playing for his wages. He was playing for the fans, and his body language was shambolically at odds with the professional for much of his time this season before Mourinho was gone. He's obviously improved for Solskjaer, but long term, I wouldn't have much faith in him in terms of consistency. And this stuff with Real Madrid, if there's any loyalty left in football, he certainly owes Manchester United something, because they kind of, chose him over Mourinho. He, if they say no player is bigger than the club, but Pogba in the sad reality of the game is huge for Manchester United at the moment in terms of bringing in money, and they kind of sided with him despite the fact that he was grossly unprofessional. We remember that Instagram post or whatever it was on social media when Mourinho lost his job. That was a classless thing to do. He's played well, in fairness, for Solskjaer, apart from few games, particularly Wolves in the Cup. He was very, very poor. But I don't see what Solskjaer can do here except say that he trusts Pogba and give him all the love that he seems to need and requires. But I wouldn't have much faith that he wouldn't go to Real Madrid.
Zidane's been stirring the pot nicely here. His quotes talking about how Pogba's not part of my squad, but then in the very same quote goes on to say, maybe if he wants to come here one day, why shouldn't he come here to Real Madrid? Not exactly, sitting on the fence there saying he should, if he was ever interested, come on board a ship. Like, it would be an interesting dynamic. I mean, the fact that Paul Pogba's got a good thing going on with Solskjaer at the moment, is the general manager, is Zinedine Zidane really that close to Solskjaer as opposed to Jose Mourinho? Is he really going to be the person who puts his arm around the shoulder of the player? Granted, he's created a far better atmosphere in the Real Madrid dressing room and manages to pander to egos better than any manager we've seen in recent times in world football. Is that necessarily the same thing, though, as, say, the atmosphere that Solskjaer has created at United? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that Zidane is that far away from the tough disciplinarian that, say, Jose Mourinho would have been.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but pander to egos is certainly the right kind of phrase there. Whether he wants Pogba in that dressing room or not, I would be very wary of signing Pogba unless, obviously, he is a world-class player, but you don't necessarily need him in terms of the kind of, I don't know, psychological imbalance that can probably take over a dressing room with somebody who's so tricky, and he is very, very tricky to deal with. We can tell that, and if you're a manager, do you really want the potential for that imbalance? I don't know. I'd be a little bit wary. Hazard is probably a slightly different case. I think Hazard has generally played well for Chelsea, and he's definitely going to leave. The two of them signing would be quite incredible, but I suppose Pogba might just fancy living in Spain as well. Who knows? I don't know. I'd be worried for Manchester United how this might end up. But having said that, if they lose him, I think they'll be gaining in another way, and that just he's gone and get back to basics, because they've a very good bunch of players who are playing for Solskjaer at the minute. That's the main positive. I think they're very much united behind him and they're giving their all, because they certainly weren't for Mourinho.
No, for sure. All right, that's it from this morning's sports pages. We are moving on to rugby next.